now marijuana crops are bad for the environment, of course. And this is not new, but they are keeping this reefer madness alive, even in the wake of Scott Pruitt being named as the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. And here's a slew of articles if you just search for that. And this goes all the way back to 2011. You got 2016, 2014, 2015, all the way back to 2013, 11. All these different publications talking about how the use of high-intensity discharge lights is bad because it uses so much electricity. I refer you to a Walmart parking lot, and I also refer you to LED grows gaining in popularity, and maybe the LEDs can gain in popularity in Walmart parking lots as well. Well, anyway, they also cite the damage that crops are doing to the environment when you have outdoor crops because of the pesticides and all the other stuff that they're supposedly using to grow marijuana. I personally grow organically, so I'm not doing anything bad to the environment ever. People that do suck, but I'm not going to get down on people for using chemicals and putting chemicals in the environment. It's not a good practice, and I'm not down with it, but if you do it responsibly and wisely, it is possible to not be a major contributor to the pollution that's going on. Now, having said that, this is complete bullshit, what we're seeing here. This article from February 21st, 2017 is total reefer madness for the 21st century and beyond. Because let's just look at this in a general sense. Currently, not as much marijuana is being grown as other crops. These other crops, some of them are really, really needy when it comes to pesticide care and all that. And then you got your GMO crops. And I don't know where you stand on GMO crops, but I personally don't think that they're safe. I don't think that the glyphosate that they use to treat GMO crops, to me, I haven't seen proof that it is safe. I know that Monsanto and other companies pay a lot of money to make sure that there's proof out there that it is safe, which is ridiculous. So it's junk science, just like this is. And this article is from physics.org. I looked at some of the other publications that they work with. A lot of it is a little bit clickbaity, a little bit of mix of that, plus some maybe intellectual arguments for things that people like, topics of the day or whatever. They do talk a lot about things that might not even exist sometimes, or only exist to a few people that study stuff on a crazy level, but whatever. I'm not going to criticize these guys. But this article is rife with critical points of bullshit. All right, so let's start right off with marijuana sales have created an economic boom in the U.S. That have fully or partially relaxed their cannabis laws, but is the increased cultivation and sale of this crop also creating escalating environmental damage and a threat to public health? Asked in the form of a question. I hate it when someone claims to be writing a news piece and they start it out with a question, because you automatically frame it as a gotcha situation. And from here on out, you don't really have to have any solid proof for your point. You just keep talking about it like it's a question. Like, oh, what if this is this? And what if that is that? Oh, it's so tiring to see this form of hatchetry on the English language. In an opinion piece published by the journal Environmental Science and Technology, researchers from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and Lancaster University in the UK have called on U.S. federal agencies to fund studies that will gather essential environmental data from the legal cultivation farms and facilities. The legal ones. So remember that this is all from an opinion piece, and it was published in the Journal of Environmental Science and Technology. This information could be then used to help U.S. states minimize any environmental and public health damage caused by this burgeoning industry and aid legal marijuana growers in making their business environmentally sustainable. So far, I don't really have a problem with this. As I said with studies before, if you got studies, they're not bad, especially with marijuana studies, especially for medical purposes or stuff like this. Once you prove that what they're talking about is complete like garbage, and what's real is that, marijuana is medicine. And the more the studies are proving it. Meanwhile, if they're trying to make a claim to say that it isn't safe or it isn't medicine, now we can be just like they were in the critical sense of where's the study, and we don't see the studies. They say it's dangerous. They don't even tell us what the dangers are. All right. And then they got these old reefer madness fallback on, and I feel like I'm getting to the point where I am basically, my job is to be the, I don't know, the reefer madness guy out here that catches it while it's out there to help the general public consume it in a more fact-based way. All right, but the article titled High Time to Assess the Environmental Impacts of Cannabis Cultivation, co-authored by William Vazzuti, Associate Professor of Environmental Sciences and Engineering at UNC's Gillings School of Global Public Health, and Kirsty Ashworth, Research Fellow at Lancaster University's Lancaster Environment Center, say that this expanded cultivation carries with it serious environmental effects. How can this compare to soy crops, corn crops? I live in the Midwest, so we see a lot of corn crops, bean and soy crops. How are you comparing to that? I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of acres of these other crops. There ain't nothing like that going on with cannabis, right? And like I said, the indoor grows, that's not even the same amount of electricity as everybody in the United States' TVs being on all day, for example. Or how about the emissions of everybody mowing their lawn every day? So give me a break with the lights, and give me a break with outdoor growing. All right, the article points out that cannabis is an especially needy crop, requiring high temperatures, strong light, highly fertile soil, and large volumes of water, around twice that of wine grapes. Wrong. In addition, the authors state that a few available studies of marijuana cultivation have uncovered potentially significant environmental impacts due to excessive water and energy demands and local contamination of water, air, and soil. Keep that in mind, because that study that he's talking about, the few available studies, no, there's no available studies, and they're all studies of illegal outdoor, marijuana grows in the mountains. And down below here, you have a chart that, I thought this would be interesting to note. This is these estimates were done by California Normal, and I think I could trust their estimates. They use other things to guide them as far as what these other crops use. So this is not, that's not their estimate on alfalfa. That's just what alfalfa has been known to use in yearly water consumption in California. That's a fact. They can measure that data. Cannabis, they can measure that data too now, because these are all legal grows that they're measuring, and that's how much water the cannabis industry in California has used compared to these other things. Maybe you're saying, well, marijuana growing ain't as big as it's going to be in California. Even if you double or triple that number, you're still not going to hit the wine grapes. You're never going to hit the wine grapes with cannabis, I guarantee it. And then the alfalfa, forget about it. Almonds, you're not even getting that many almonds for that much water use. All right, we can talk about this all day. The fact is, I grow marijuana myself, and I know it doesn't require any more water than any other plant. You know, there it can actually use a lot less water if you monitor your watering, and you can bring them right to the point where they're almost in a drought mode before watering again. They actually thrive when you do that. So anyway, these guys are using study after study that, for example, a study of illegal outdoor grow operations in Northern California found that rates of water extraction from streams threatened aquatic ecosystems. High levels of growth, nutrients, as well as pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides also found their way back into the local environment, further damaging aquatic wildlife. Um, I'd like to see the proof that that actually came from these outdoor illegal grow operations, but even if it did, they came from illegal outdoor grow operations. So what's this got to do with at all with the legal grow operations, and especially the outdoor ones in California? You're trying to tell me that someone's watering their marijuana plants with something worse than Miracle Grow or something? I don't believe it. First of all, I've seen what they sell to grow marijuana with, and none of it is any more dangerous to the environment than anything that you can buy as a homeowner from Menards or Home Depot or whatever, the garden section at Walmart. So everybody in the country can pour these same exact nutrients, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, all of it. They can pour that right in their backyard. They do. They pour this all over their yard. They even got ortho weed killer and all this other stuff that you wouldn't want to find in your water table. Well, you can buy all that crap at your local hardware store or garden center, and anybody and everybody can spray it and pour it on wherever they want. It might tell you on the bottle that, hey, you shouldn't pour this on something that's going to eventually get into the groundwater. But A, most people that use that garbage are too old to even be able to read that fine print. And B, it's getting in the groundwater anyway, man. These people don't even care, and even if you stop the individual consumers from doing it, you have farmers that are doing this on an industrial scale with all crops, tomatoes, corn, bean, flower crops for ornamental flowers. They even use even more dangerous chemicals because guess what? It's an ornamental crop, so people don't have to eat it. They spray all kinds of crap on that shit. So again, illegal grow study operations, garbage. Everything these guys are talking about so far doesn't really actually apply to the real marijuana industry in California or anywhere else. They talk about Colorado a couple times in this article as well, and other articles that I've seen where Colorado was the focus, primarily because these places are where marijuana is legal now. And back then, California was considered a bastion of medical marijuana that was almost just like, it was so easy to get a card, and still is. It's even easier. People just looked at it as being a legal marijuana with a medical card to back you up. Well, whatever. The bottom line is people always are going to use marijuana, or California, especially, and Colorado as well, because they were the first. But they're always going to use California from here on out for anything they're going to want to say, whether it's positive or negative about marijuana. Let's see what they're saying here. Controlling the indoor growing environment requires considerable energy, with power requirements estimated to be similar to that of Google's massive data centers. Is that it? So I've read somewhere else where all the indoor growing operations are estimated at 1% of this country's overall pull on the grid. That sounds like a lot, but to me, when you say Google's massive data centers take up a whole 1% of the power grid, I'm starting to think maybe we need a bigger and better power grid, which we do because our power grid is old as hell and it's shit. So yeah, we need a new power grid, a high-tech power grid full of renewable energy hooked up to it, like, wind turbines and geothermal. We need a lot more solar. We have the sun available in the desert every day. There's also, you can use water for energy. There's ways to do it with the tides of the ocean. There's ways to do it with rivers. You can do it with anywhere where you see a waterfall. Hell, you can make a waterfall and turn it into a power station. Doesn't have any negative impacts on the environment or the ozone layer or none of that. But we're in a situation where the oil barons have got us by the balls. The oil barons aren't going to let hemp get out of the bag. So they're going to have these kind of articles are going to be pounding at you. They're going to be throwing this shit at you to try to make you feel like, oh damn, that marijuana growing, that's what's causing all these environmental disasters and problems. Oh, give me a fucking break, man. More on that later. Anyway, there's no significant data has been collected on the air pollution impacts on workers' public health inside these grow facilities or the degradation of outdoor air quality due to emissions produced by the industrial scale production of marijuana. I think the only thing they're talking about is the smell of marijuana, which people like the people that wrote this garbage, they hate the smell of marijuana. And I've even seen people in the message board of this particular article defend this article by citing that the terpenes and really strong marijuana mixes with the nitrogen in the air to create toxic air pollution. I don't know, it's fucking ridiculous. The authors emphasize, however, much of the data on marijuana cultivation to date has come from monitoring illegal cannabis growing operations. Dr. Ashworth of Lancaster Environmental Center said, the illegal status of marijuana has prevented us from understanding the detrimental impacts of this industrial scale operation has on the environment and public health. How about studying the reverse effects of that? How about actually looking at the negative carbon footprint that these grow operations are providing you and how much oxygen are getting cranked back into the atmosphere? I mean, are you kidding? This is the most ridiculous thing. You just made Lancaster Environment Center lose all credibility with me. I don't give a shit if you guys say global warming's real because February we just had 2 weeks of 60-degree weather in Michigan and you say it's global warming's real. All of a sudden, if you're the Lancaster Environment Center, I might not even fucking believe you. This is just outrageous. Anyway, this is an industry undergoing a historic transition, presenting a historic opportunity to be identified as a progressive world-leading example of good practice in environmental stewardship. As compared to what? Everybody that came before the marijuana industry and just shit on every river and shit on every piece of land and just shit in the sky with smokestacks sticking up and burning coal and natural gas and shitty oil and regular gasoline, kerosene, just burning the shittiest stuff to power up their bullshit and crank out their garbage. And then they have to move to places like Mexico and China with their shitty factories. The only plant is these plants. They're the ones that have to move to places like China and Mexico because they know they're polluting so bad that the people in America aren't going to put up with that shit. You know? Like, come on. Give me a break. We are the ones that have the stewardship, the environmental stewardship. We're the ones telling you not to build pipelines because we don't need them. We're telling you to build more solar and more, wind turbines. When it comes to solar, you go drive around and look at all these massive solar panel situations that you have around the area. Guess what they say on them? Whatever your electricity company is, that's who's running that shit. And they're doing it for them to save money because they know it's a lot better and cheaper to get free energy from the sun than it is to crank up them big turbines. The continued expansion of legalization by the states does offer significant opportunities for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Environmental Protection Agency, National Institute of Health, and Occupation Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, to fund research into legal cannabis cultivation to protect the environment. No thanks. So what you're saying is you want to raise taxes on everyday six-pack Joe guys so that all these government goons can reach their regulatory fingers in the marijuana industry and give us a new book of rules? No thanks, man. We don't want this shit, just like you Republican people out there always talk about regulations. Well, these are what you guys are talking about, right? We don't want this shit. There's no occupational safety hazards to working around marijuana plants. If there is, then whatever. You wear gloves. You have safety stuff. You tell people that scissors can cut you. I don't know what the big dangers are. When you're talking about industrial sized grow operations, it's the same thing. It just takes more people. And again, generating accurate data in all the areas we discussed offers significant potential to reduce energy consumption and environmental harm, protect public health, and ultimately improve cultivation methods, said Dr. Vizzetti. Dr. Vizzetti. There are also significant potential public health issues caused by emissions from the plants themselves rather than smoking it. Did you hear that? Let me just run that by you one more time. There are also significant potential public health issues caused by the emissions from the plants themselves rather than smoking it. These emissions cause both indoor and outdoor pollution. Holy shit. I almost can't believe that I'm reading that right now. Well, Dr. Vizzetti, let me just tell you that you are full of shit. There is absolutely no fucking way you have any proof that there is any dangerous emissions that could be causing potential health issues just to being emitted from a plant growing out somewhere, just a plant. So you're saying that a plant sitting there emitting dangerous shit, that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard of. So like I said, the smell, I guess, is what he's talking about. All this shit going on in the face of Scott Pruitt being sworn in as your Attorney General. I'm sorry, as the head of the EPA. He's the Attorney General from Oklahoma, if you remember, who's been trying to sue Colorado for the people buying marijuana from Colorado and then ending up in Oklahoma. I think Nebraska was in on this thing too. I did some stories about it. It's just, that's the guy, Scott Pruitt. Yeah, he's getting sworn in right here, head of the EPA. And you got people talking about it because he's another guy that was, a big marijuana prohibitionist, big outspoken guy in that realm. He's a big rising star in the prohibition world, which is a dying dinosaur. So I don't know what the hell that's all good for. But yeah, so here's the Washington Examiner talking about it. Like, what's the big deal about this guy running the EPA? Well, he's the second voice in President Trump's cabinet who has taken a strong stance against the growing trend of liberalization of marijuana laws across the country. And if you remember correctly, I did a story about this too, highlighted in the blue there, is Pruitt was the Attorney General in Oklahoma, who had gathered enough signatures to get their medical marijuana question on the ballot. However, Pruitt came along and rewrote the ballot language, the title, in fact. He rewrote some language in the ballot itself, and because of that, it had to jump through some more hoops and stuff, and because of that, it wouldn't have made it on time to actually be on the ballot. Yeah, he's the guy that did that shit, and he defends this crap, and he's been sued over it as well. We'll see how that turns out. So as you're getting all this noise from these articles that you've seen on the internet, if you Google that growing marijuana is bad for the environment, they're trying to paint this horrific picture of what marijuana is doing to your environment. Well, this guy here is actually doing bad shit to your environment, and now he's the head of the EPA. So I don't think they're gonna continue down that road of bullshit talking about the EPA needs to come along and regulate the marijuana industry, and B, I definitely don't think this guy Scott Pruitt is going to do a damn thing about anything going on with marijuana. I don't think he's even going to open his mouth. But if he does, it'll be because he has a stack of articles talking shit about how marijuana is destroying the environment. Well, it isn't. All right, guys? It ain't. As a matter of fact, as this guy here says, Dr. Masaru Emoto, remember Fukushima? Yeah, well, it's still a thing. It's the core is still melting. It's still cranking out radioactive waste into the Pacific Ocean at a unbelievably alarming rate. There's all kinds of anomalies going on right now in the Pacific, mass die-offs of animals, birds. We're talking birds, fish, other aquatic life. You know, all the things that they were talking about marijuana runoff does to the ponds and shit. No, that's what a nuclear power plant did. And this doctor, Masaru Emoto, he's a really smart guy. He's a genius. And he says, plant a lot of hemp in the land of Fukushima. Hemp's vibration has the potentiality to purify the contaminated environment made by radiation. And I think he's right, man. I think that's the only thing that can save you from that. It can absorb that radiation. And oh, by the way, you grow a concentrated amount of hemp and it cranks out all kinds of oxygen. And let's not forget that Jack Herer, the godfather of this movement, the guy who wrote The Emperor Wears No Clothes and revealed all of the facts about marijuana, hemp, and prohibition, he said, I don't know if hemp is going to save the world, but it's the only thing that can. And I think he said that back in the early 80s. All right, and it can, it really can. How can it save the planet? Well, just in trees alone, man, we're talking about millions of trees every year could be saved because of hemp. You got textiles, you can make anything that you can make that looks like plastic or anything like that out of hemp. Fuel, you can make biofuel out of it, and it's a lot cleaner on the environment to make, and it's a lot cleaner on the environment to burn. And guess what? It's a biofuel plant that is not a food-based plant like corn, so you wouldn't feel guilty if people are still starving somewhere that you were using corn to power up your cell phone or whatever. I don't know. I don't know whose cell phone runs on gasoline, but anyway, you can make anything out of hemp. It's the most industrial plant there ever was. And of course, it's medicinal, and you can eat hemp and survive. It's a total food crop. It's a superfood. Hemp seeds are superfood. And that's all I know. I don't know what that guy was talking about. Pruitt, he's crazy. He's the EPA guy, and now he's got ammo from, I don't know, all kinds of authors, all kinds of publications talking about how marijuana cultivation is bad for the environment. Don't buy this reefer madness, people. It's horse shit.